Hey, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad you're back here with me again today. And we're going to continue on our story. We're reading the DJ Dillon series. This one is Ghost Dog of Stony Ridge. And we are now on chapter 5, Behind Barbed Wire. So I'm going to go ahead and just start it because I was getting ready to go to bed and I realized, oh man, I haven't even read anything. So I'm going to do it now. Right after the benediction, that's at the end of the church service, DJ told Alfred he was going to write to the governor. His friend pushed his thick glasses up, shook his head. He'll never read your letter, DJ. Governors get tons of letters. So somebody else probably opens their mail. The governor will probably never see your letter. That's what's going to make it so challenging, DJ said. I'm going home and write the letter now. As soon as the Dillons reached home, DJ borrowed a pen from Two Mom. It wouldn't do to write the governor in pencil, the way DJ wrote his stories. It'd be okay to use his own pad of lined paper, though. The boy sat down at the small homemade pine desk in his bedroom and began writing. But the words that had been so smooth in his head were jumbles on the paper. DJ scratched out many lines and paragraphs, crumpled the paper, and threw away sheet after sheet. Late in the afternoon, discouraged and frustrated, he gave up. Maybe, Lord, he prayed softly, I don't really have a gift for writing after all. DJ was still upset when he went to bed, but he tried not to think about the letter. He slept fitfully and awoke to the sound of the ghost dog bugling on the trail. DJ got up to listen, wondering if Alfred would ever see that hound, let alone own him. Suddenly, the sound of the distant baying faded, and the letters to the governor reformed itself in DJ's head. At first, the boy refused to believe that he'd write any better than before. So he went back to bed. He couldn't sleep. Finally, before dawn Monday morning, DJ got up and again picked up his pen. This time, the letter that had formed in his head flowed smoothly onto the paper. Dawn was just breaking when the boy leaned back in his chair and softly read aloud, Dear Governor, would you like to help save thousands of lives of people in this state? I'm a stringer for the Gazette, the Timbergold County newspaper, and have thought about a story you could help write and how all these people's lives were saved. Silently, DJ skimmed the rest of the letter. Satisfied, he signed it, folded and sealed it, carefully placing it in his shirt pocket where it wouldn't get crushed. He walked outside the house and freed Hero from his doghouse chain. DJ snapped the lead chain on the dog and headed downtown to the post office. Since it was so early in the morning, DJ was surprised to see Ormley Crater sitting at the old four-door sedan pickup near the post office. The older boy gave DJ a sickly grin. DJ couldn't explain why, but it made him about half angry. But before he decided what to do or say, Mr. Crater came out of the side street half a block away and walked rapidly towards DJ. He thought the old man moved sort of sideways like a crab. Mr. Krager's strange scuttling movement brought him by DJ, but the old man didn't seem to recognize the boy as he passed. DJ did not speak. He watched as the old man crawled behind the wheel of the sedan, then said something to his nephew. Ormley turned and gave DJ that infuriating grin as the sedan pulled off. DJ was surprised at how much his insides churned over that simple incident. Nothing had happened, and yet the boy felt such intense emotion that he walked rapidly to the blue metal drop box outside the post office. Angrily, he pulled the handle down and shoved the governor's letter in. DJ let the handle go hard, so hard that it slammed shut with a metallic crash, a crash of metal. DJ looked sharply around to see if anybody was watching, but the small town streets were empty. DJ walked on towards Alfred's house, leading Hero. Alfred was waiting at the foot of his parents' front steps. He had borrowed Duger, his little brother's mixed bloodhound and Redbone. The stray black and tan was also on a light chain snapped around his neck, since he had no collar. DJ saw his friend jump up. "You hear that ghost dog again last night?" "I heard him. Sure is a pretty sound. I also mailed my letter to the governor." "He'll never see it." DJ was a little disappointed at his friend's lack of enthusiasm. Maybe that was because Alfred didn't understand how much DJ was counting on an answer from the governor. The mountain boy hid his disappointment and shrugged. "Maybe not, but we'll see." DJ watched as his short-tailed dog greeted his old friend Duger. Then Hero inspected the stray. DJ saw that the hair-pulling bear dog was considerably smaller than either of the other hounds, though Hero probably weighed as much as the stray. In a moment, the dogs were wagging their tails and ready to hunt. Alfred said, "I'm not sure we should take the stray. His feet are awful tender. Take a look and see what you think." DJ knelt and gently picked up the black and tan's forepaws from his front feet. The hound licked his hands and whined a little. The boy frowned. "They seem worse than yesterday, and they hurt him a little." "I heard him give a little cry, so I put salve on his paws," Alfred said, "but it didn't seem to help much. Maybe we'd better leave him here, though I'm sure wanted to see how good of a hunter he is." The boys took the stray dog back up behind the house. Alfred unsnapped the lead chain and stuck it in his hip pocket. Then he tied the 30-foot-long chain around the black and tan's neck. This chain was attached to Duger's doghouse. But the minute the boys and the other dogs started up the hill, the black tanned hound ran to the end of his chain, rearing up on his hind legs, and began pawing at the air with his front paws. He let out a mournful howl. "Woo!" DJ stopped and looked back. "Your mom's going to like that noise all the time we're gone. Guess he likes to hunt so much he can't stand to be left behind. Some hounds are like that, you know. But those pads will never heal if he doesn't stay off them. I'm surprised they're no better than they are, since he's done nothing but lay around your place these past couple days." "Me too. But we'll make him rest today. Come on, let's give Duger and Hero a little exercise." The boys went off over the mountain, leading the two hounds, and hearing the stray loud howl. But the boys had barely topped the mountain and started down when the howling stopped. The boys looked at each other. "Your mother probably threatened him with the broom," DJ said with a grin. As the boys were almost at the bottom of the hill, they saw Hero and Duger turn around and look back. The boys did the same. "It's the stray!" DJ exclaimed. "He must have broke the chain." The boys didn't want to lose any more time taking the stray back to Alfred's house. As the dog reached them, seeming not to notice his cut pads, Alfred reached into his hip pocket and pulled out the light lead chain. He attached it to the stray, who was happily waving his tail and trying to lick Alfred's face. In a few minutes, the hound was joyfully bounding along with Alfred. The boy held the black and tanned chain in his left hand and Duger's leash in his right. They headed back towards the barbed wire where they'd been run off before. As they approached, the boys slowed the dogs and looked carefully. Alfred asked, "Think we should take the long way around the lake or take a chance cutting through that fence?" DJ considered the situation, looking carefully into the dense stand of evergreens. Alfred did the same while the dogs paced impatiently on their chains, anxious to hunt. Alfred whispered, "Can you see anything?" "No, just shadows." "Well, it'd be smarter to go around the wire this time." "We can get to the lake by going to the right. That will take us towards Skillet Peak, where the ghost dog's been heard." "Yeah, I guess so. But that property's still not posted," Alfred muttered, "and I don't like being ran off. Still, once property is fenced, I guess that's one way of saying keep out. Private property." "Okay, let's go around the wire." He started walking to the right, aware that goose flesh was forming on his upper arms, goosebumps. As the boys and dogs eased past the new strands of barbed wire and the deep shadows beyond, DJ wondered if the man who'd shouted at them last week was hiding there watching them. Was he carrying a gun? Suddenly, the stray threw up his head and sniffed the air. Hero and Duger did the same. Then they bawled excitedly while the stray was silent. It was obvious they'd caught the scent of something toward the fence, for all three animals faced that way. They lunged at their leashes. Both boys stopped and braced themselves against the pulling of the hounds. Ooh, they were holding on tight. "What do you suppose it is?" Alfred asked, watching the dogs. "Coon? Bear, maybe?" "Hard to say. Can't be the ghost dog because the hounds won't trail the dog. Can't be a person because none of these dogs is trained to trail people." "Well," DJ mused, "Duger trailed your brother once. Duger's mostly bloodhound, so maybe he did catch a whiff of somebody. But no, Hero and the stray also smell it, and they're not people trailers. At least I know Hero isn't." Alfred asked, "Think we should turn that stray loose and see if he's a strike dog?" DJ understood what his friend meant. In a pack of hounds, one dog is used to start the trail or strike it. He's sometimes called a pappy or a cold nose dog. When he was has worked the scent out and is running pretty well along the invisible trail, usually a younger, more inexperienced dog is turned in. He runs to help the strike dog work out the scent and almost catch up with their quarry. When these hounds have found the game they've trailed, the turn-in or cutout dog is turned loose. He doesn't necessarily follow the scent on the ground or bushes as the hound dog. The turn-in dog sometimes seems to get the scent in the air. He may take a shortcut and come upon the game before the hound's noses have taken them there from the trail. Hero, being half hound and the rest Airedale and Australian Shepherd, was bred as a cut cross dog. He had enough hound blood in him to follow a trail. Yet his instinct was to go for the game's heels, as a shepherd goes for a sheep or steer's hind legs. A hound is more likely to go for the game's head, which is naturally the most dangerous part. In a bear hunt, the smaller, faster hair puller, like Hero, usually brought the bear to bay or to put it up in a tree. If the hair puller didn't get there fast enough, the bear might catch a slower, clumsier hound with his powerful paws. If he scooped the hound up in that way, the bear's great tusks, these the long teeth, would chomp down and the dog would die or get badly hurt. Yeah, DJ said after a moment's thought. Let's see what this stray can do. Freed from his chain, the Black and Tan hound proved his hunting experience. He ran back and forth quickly, cutting for the direction the game or quarry had gone. With his nose to the ground, the hound moved rapidly, following the scent, his heavy tail swinging happily. He didn't even seem to mind having cut pads because he was caught up in the joy of the hunt. In a moment, he had the scent worked out enough so he started following it at a fast trot. Hasn't got enough scent to open up yet and bawl to let us know he struck the trail, Alfred said, holding Duger back. The red hound was whining and anxious to go with the older veteran. Hey, look where he's headed. Right for the barbed wire. Alfred cupped his hands and called, Here, dog! Here! Stray pooch! Whatever your name is, come here! The Black and Tan didn't seem to hear. He quartered away, closer and closer to the fence, running silently, intent on the scent. But the sight was too much for Duger. He let out an excited yelp and ran hard against the leash. Alfred, lowering his hands from the calling, couldn't hold on to the chain. It sailed out in a bright arc and fell heavily to the dust. It streaked away like a silver snake behind a red-colored hound who was racing after the Black and Tan hound. Duger, no, come back here, Alfred called, clapping his hands sharply together and whistling. But the red hound didn't obey. He ran hard, trailing sharp, happy barks behind him. Alfred turned to DJ with a moan. Oh, boy, Alfred exclaimed. Now I've done it. They're both going for the fence. The boys called and whistled, but the hounds were intent on the trail. They kept moving away closer and closer to the fence where the boys had been scared off just a few days before. DJ was having a hard time holding on to Hero. The scruffy mutt was dancing on his hind legs, straining at his collar against the chain, trying to follow the other dogs. But DJ kept a firm grip and watched as the hounds neared the fence. Immediately, the stray dog lifted his nose from the scent and stopped. "Hey, hey," Alfred called. "Look at that. The stray's coming back." "He sure is. But Duger's still running. I remember Brother Paul Stagg saying he once had a hound that always quit a trail when a younger dog caught up to him. Maybe the stray's like that. Well, for whatever reason, the black and tan has quit the trail completely. But not Duger. He's going right for the fence. And the way he's barking, everybody within 100 miles will hear him." Both boys looked at each other, their eyes widening in fear. If someone hurt Duger, Alfred's little brother would be broken-hearted. "What do you think, DJ?" "I think we got to get Tag's dog back before something happens to him." Quickly, DJ tied Hero to a sturdy clump of trees. The stray dog came up, tongue rolling fast over his teeth, like that, and flopped down hard on the brown pine needles. Alfred quickly slipped the chain around the black and tan's neck and secured the hound to a younger black oak tree. "Ready?" DJ asked as Alfred straightened. "Let's go." The boys ran, shouting and whistling after Duger, but the red dog didn't slacken his speed. Since he was mostly bloodhound, he was much slower on the trail than most other hounds. But it was obvious he was going to reach the fence before the boys could stop him. "Why can't Duger run without baying?" Alfred puffed, pushing his heavy glasses up with the thumb of his left hand. "Even if the man's on the other side of the world, he'll hear that hound and come running to meet us. Let's hope we can see what that guy's hiding before Duger gets there," DJ said, puffing a little. Tag's dog didn't even slow up when he came to the fence. He seemed to make a small arch in his back, dropped his head and hips slightly. Then he was under the lower strand of barbed wire. Wow, he got right under it. He vanished into the deep shadows, still baying at the trail of whatever he was following. Just before the boys reached the fence, glancing fearfully around to see if the man was there, Duger let out a different kind of bark. Both boys stopped at the fence, trying to listen while catching their breath. "What was that?" Alfred asked. "I'm not sure. Sounded like a yip. Like maybe Duger got hurt. Listen, he stopped barking. Do you suppose—" "I hope not." Swallowing hard and trying to keep from letting his fear get the best of him, DJ placed his right boot sole on the lower strand of barbed wire. Carefully, he raised up the next strand. As Alfred bent to crawl through the wires, DJ's blue eyes tried to peer into the shadows under the tall, dense evergreens. Still no sound from Duger. Alfred said softly as he stood on the other side of the fence. He helped hold the wires apart for DJ, who slipped through and stood beside his friend. "Let's go," DJ said. The boys ran far enough into the shadows for their eyes to adjust from the bright sunlight on the clearing where they had tied the two dogs. DJ didn't say anything, but he was thinking how they could ever explain to a 6-year-old boy that they'd let something terrible happen to his red hound. "Listen!" DJ stopped suddenly, holding up his hand and cocking his head. "Sounds like a dog whining." Alfred turned his head slowly as his eyes moved to the shadows. "There, That's Duger. Alfred raised his voice slightly, but still tried not to call too loudly. Here, Duger! Come here! Come! The hound whined and moved sideways, head and shoulders toward them. DJ whispers, somebody's caught him and tied him up. See? He's tied with a piece of rope. Fearfully, the boys ran toward the hound, looking in all directions. They ran on their toes, aware of the noise their boots made on the dry pine needles and small limbs and twigs. Everything sounded much louder, and the boys expected an angry shout or maybe a gunshot. But they reached the hound, and Alfred bent to free the rope from the pine tree that had been lightning struck and fallen in splintered pieces. Hurry, DJ whispered, glancing fearfully around, his eyes probing the shadows for any sign of danger. Whoever tied Duger's got to be close by. I'm hurrying. There, he's free. Okay, let's go. The boys ran towards the fence while Tag's red dog silently bounding between them. DJ didn't say anything, but he thought there was a new swelling starting on Duger's head just behind his right ear. A quick glance made DJ believe it had been made with a stick or a club. That's probably why the dog had yelped once and allowed himself to be tied without a fuss. It seemed to take forever, but the boys reached the fence. Quickly, DJ helped Alfred through and then followed. The boys started to sprint from the fence, grinning happily, thinking they'd made it, when a voice called out of the shadows behind them, Next time your dog won't come back. The boys glanced back. Duger's hackles rose on his neck and shoulders, and he growled, staring at the shadows. The voice came again, hard and cold. And neither will you two. The boys exchanged glances. That's not the same voice, Alfred whispered. Not the one we heard the other day. Sounds younger than before, DJ agreed. But I don't recognize it. Neither do I. Let's run. DJ and Alfred dashed away from the fence, racing back to the open area where they'd tied Hero and the stray. But neither boy doubted the unseen voice that threatened them from the shadows. Ooh, that was a little intense. Wonder what's going on there. Well, that's the end of chapter 5. And so they were able to rescue Duger. But I think they should stay away. I don't know what you think. Tomorrow we'll be reading chapter 6, Trouble with Kathy. I wonder what's going to go on with her. Well, I just want to tell you I love you. I really do. And even more important than that, God loves you, and He always will. So, whatever you do, you keep dreaming. And I'll be reading to you again tomorrow. All right, good night.